See this here. All right. So we are live. All right. Hey, everybody. How you guys doing? We're back again for another show with Talks with Alex. Let me adjust my screen a little bit so that it's not echoing. All right. So we are live. Thank you all for coming in and watching me for another night. I'm really excited to have the people on that I have. These are some great, amazing women on my show tonight. Last week, we discussed the Democratic convention and people's feelings going into the convention. We had great panelists of staffers and people who have worked on campaigns. And so I'm excited now to have some new people, but women. And I wanted to kind of get their perspective also because it's really important to see both sides. I mean, I think sometimes we shared issues, but sometimes I think women tend to be a little bit better at focusing on the issues that matter. So I kind of want to get their perspective. So let me talk to you about the amazing women that we have. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with them while I'm introducing them. I have some great bios. And so the first person I'm going to bring on is Ms. Castro. Vangie was born in the Philippines and immigrated to the U.S. at age 3 when their family sought political asylum from Ferdinand Marcos's authoritarian regime in the late 1970s. The Castro family first settled in St. Paul, where Vangie's father worked as a licensed CPA. They moved to San Francisco Bay Area after about a year, where they were raised as the youngest of 4 siblings and 2 half-siblings. After high school, Vangie worked in the service industry for 12 years, earning an associate's degree in liberal arts along the way from Shabbat Community College. Did I say that right? Okay, great. Personal experience and hearing stories of others they met in the service industry taught them the difficulty of succeeding without an education, and a desire slowly grew to help others navigate the system and escape poverty, or perhaps even to create change within the system. To this end, Vangie returned to school at California State University, East Bay, where they studied political science. While a student, Vangie interned at the Campus Diversity Center, where they developed and presented curriculum on race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religion, social justice, class, and socioeconomics. They were board chairperson of the Gay and Lesbian Community Services from 2011 to 2013, and served as a member of the governor of Dayton's task force on the prevention of school bullying from 2012 to 2014. They were a Victory Institute Empowerment Fellow in 2017, a part of my cohort. So I got to meet Vangie, and we learned all about the political world, and then went to the international conference. So we had a great experience together. Education manager at the Diversity Council for 2017, education and outreach manager for Planned Parenthood North Central States from 2017 to 2018, and ranked choice voting community organizer with Fair Vote Minnesota in 2019. Whew, that was a lot. Okay, y'all will get to hear from them in a couple of minutes. All right. So the next person that we have is the awesome, the great Ms. Nikki Johnson-Huston. Oh my goodness. All right. So Nikki Johnson-Huston, Esquire, is a tax attorney in Philadelphia with her own firm, the law offices of Nikki Johnson-Huston, LLC, and spent over 6 years as an assistant solicitor in the major tax unit for the City of Philadelphia Law Department. Wow. In 2014, graduate of Temple University, yay, Beasley School of Law, she earned a JD, MBA, LLM in taxation in only 4 years. Wow. Nikki is a frequent speaker on how she overcame a life of poverty and homelessness to become a successful attorney. Nikki is a former member of the Philadelphia Bar Association Board of Governors, Board of Trustees for Project Home, and former co-chair of the Women in the Profession Public Service Task Force of Philadelphia Bar Association. Nikki started a mentoring program for high school students interested in legal careers and has led numerous panels focused on increasing educational opportunities. A determined advocate for homeless, Nikki is also an in-demand inspirational speaker who shares her story with organizations around the country. In 2015, she launched Donify, a micro philanthropy iPhone app that allows citizens to locate and donate to nearby nonprofit organizations that service people in need of emergency housing, food, medical care, mental health, job training, LGBT, and legal services. The app also allows citizens an opportunity to notify a nonprofit organization that a homeless person at the location is in need of services. Whew. All right, next, last but definitely not least, we have the great Miss Shay Franco-Clausen. She's a fierce, strong, dynamic powerhouse who works tirelessly to uplift the voiceless. Oh, geez, I can't read. Shay has been a community organizer for over 20 years, leading community beach and creek cleanups, advocating for environmental and social justice, mentoring youth through advocacy and sports, advocating for justice, involved women and girls, and running progressive political campaigns. Her energy and passion is contagious, is what many say about Shay. Her passion is shown in her undeniable advocacy and leadership. Shay bridges coalitions of the lived experience to create stronger, comprehensive legislation to uplift the marginalized and oppressed communities. Shay was instrumental in 2 California legislation victories, Senate Bill 273, authored by Senator Susan Rubio and actress Evan Rachel Wood, that expanded the statute of limitations on felony domestic violence. In the same year, working with a huge coalition of land protectors in protecting 1,000 acres of California's most threatened pieces of land in Coyote Valley. In her spare time, Shay is elected to the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority, elected Central Committee Delegate and Director of Gender and Equity, Santa Clara County Democratic Central Committee, Adult Advisor for California High School Democrats, Chair of the Santa Clara County Commission on the Status of Women, Chair of the Justice and Advocacy Committee, Board Member and Chair of the San Jose Evergreen Bond Oversight Committee, Corresponding Secretary to the California Democratic Party Black Caucus, and Board Member saved by the Future. Whew. Wow. Shay and her wife have raised 5 children, are nature lovers, and is a local Bay Area DJ. Wow. Okay. So 5 amazing, great people, and I am excited to introduce you all. Can you all hear me? Are you all there? Say hey to everybody. All right.
Hey.
So I want to talk about the Democratic Party, the week that we had last week. And I just want to kind of get your feelings of how you feel coming out of it, and what do you think our priorities are as a party. And I will start with Vangie.
Well, I thought it was pretty uplifting, and I think that's what they were hoping for. If you want to compare the current RNC convention, they only had one night yesterday, and they're having their second night tonight. And I think the difference is that they were trying to be more positive. And I feel like just the first night of the RNC, they're continuing their the whole fear-based, like, if you don't vote for me, then everything's going to be awful and there'll be more rioting. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. I'm willing to take the chances.
How about you, Nikki? What did you feel? How do you feel after we're leaving the Democratic convention in the direction of the party?
I think they did what they needed to do, which is to get us to coalesce around our candidate. I mean, the truth is, for a lot of us, Joe Biden may not have been our first, second, or third choice, but he's who we have. And I think that he did his job, which was to talk about what his vision of America was going to be, to really strike a contrast between himself and Donald Trump. And I think for a lot of people in America, it was an introduction to Kamala Harris in a way that maybe they hadn't seen her before. And as a Black woman voter, you know, I felt that they spoke to a lot of issues that were important to me. They recognized Black women who had done significant things throughout history, and that was important. That was important to me. So it wasn't everything I would have wanted to be, but for who we have, I think they did. I think they did an admirable job.
Okay. How about you, Shay?
I just want to echo what both Nikki and Vangie said. I really went in there very optimistic. I wasn't sure how to feel inspired, not as much as many other people, but I'm also in politics. So for me, the veil has been ripped from my eyes many, many moons ago. And so but this is what we have, as Nikki mentioned. And so I'm trying to make the best of it by accountability, is what we don't tend to do when we have people in office. And so as much as Biden nor Harris would have been my first, third, fourth, or fifth choice, they are there. But I am excited, and I will say this, is that we have a Black woman there, though. And to me, that was the one thing that said, I'm like, we in here, like, even if her and I don't agree on 100%, there's probably like 40% or 60% we can. And it's like, that was the part I cried, because I wish my grandmother saw this, my great grandmother saw this, my ancestors were able to see this. We had a Black president. Now we have a vice president nominee. It's a Black woman. So it's emotional. I'm torn between the two, but I think that this is who we have going forward. And the message that they were putting out in the convention were to a certain demographic of people, not necessarily me, but, to a demographic of people who really were inspired. So, and I mean, we had a Black woman that's vice, nominated as vice president. So that's huge. It's huge.
Yeah. So let me just ask you guys, let me ask you all a question then. I mean, what do you think the priorities should be of our party on day one? I know, so let's just imagine in a great world that we have a Democratic president, we have a Democratic House, and we have a Democratic city. What do you think the priorities of the Democratic Party should be that would most help the citizens? And I'll start with you, Nikki. What do you think the priorities of the party should be?
Well, I'm going to say the top three. One, we have got to get control of the coronavirus. If we do not, everything else kind of leads from that. As we've seen, it has hit us economically. Secondly is economics. And third is we have got to address the racial injustice that's going on in this country. Our cities are burning. And when you put people's back against the wall and they feel like they have nothing left, that the system does not serve them anymore, then they're going to be willing to burn the system down. And I think what the Democratic Party has done is tried to get us excited about the fact that they're not Donald Trump. But as Shay said, we have got to hold them accountable. You're going to get my vote, but there is an expectation that my community is going to be helped from that. That's it. Like, no more of just lip service, the lesser of two evils. Like, our community just cannot afford it anymore. And so, I think all three of those things have to happen concurrently at the same time.
Okay. And how about you, Vangie? What do you feel like the top priority should be for our party going into next year?
Well, I echo Nikki that we really need to get a handle on the coronavirus, because from there we have to address the social issues and the economic issues. And if we can't make sure that we can safely go back to work, we can't address the economics. And we're heading towards kind of a Great Depression, especially with going back to school, right? Colleges have reopened. A lot of students have gone back to campus, but now they've been infected by going back to having large groups. So we know that this isn't what we're doing now is not working. So that's what the Democratic Party on day one needs to address, is like how we as a nation can start to work together to get a handle on COVID-19.
I hear that. And what about you, Shay? Like, I mean, are you echoing the same thing, or do you have anything?
I echo them, but for me, I think my top priority is like Black Lives Matter. Okay. And when we talk about Black Lives Mattering, we have to talk about abolishing these oppressive Jim Crow laws that have oppressed Black and brown people since the inception of this country. I believe in abolishing prisons. I think that we have to think about criminal justice reform in a very serious and intentional way. If, I don't think we need another documentary 13, how they see it, to explain how Black people are still, public enemy number one. And the system that is designed to oppress us are people that are elected into these bodies. I think we need to really focus on criminal justice reform, period, and point blank, number one. But, coronavirus is obviously up there as well, because I definitely want to leave this beautiful office that I have. But I think is the nation has this civil unrest. They're burning things down. Many of them are, they're having it from a third person experience. They really are not Black in our skin and experience that police brutality. But I think that if we're moving into an election, and what's the first thing they can do? I mean, there's plenty of buzz on making sure that you address the criminal justice system, change the DAs, change the judges, the people that have a racist center. We need to change so much in that system because they're housing so many of our Black and brown brothers and sisters. And mental health, number 2 is mental health facilities. When Reagan got rid of all the mental health facilities, then you left it up to police officers to now control our people with mental health. And that's a majority. I mean, we have generational trauma. Let's just acknowledge that. And so I think mental health is another area we need to open and create in all these parcels and lands that we have, utilizing these mental health within our counties to be able to address the issue so police are not shooting them.
So I just want to say this, and I have to do this shamelessly, but everybody, if you are watching, please like, comment, and share. Please comment if you like what you hear. If you have any questions for our great panelists, please feel free to go ahead and share. And put that inside the comments. If you like what they're saying, you can test yes, go ahead, or you feel like you want to yourself. All right. So I just want to bring it back. So all of you expressed that coronavirus was one of the things that you feel is most important. Criminal justice is what you feel is important. Mental health, I believe, is very important. So do you think that the party was able to convey a clear direction or message in those things that you feel is important? And what are you taking away with those things that you find are important? Like, what have they communicated that shows you that this party is doing exactly that so far? Like, what about Joe Biden's plans have communicated that these issues that you all are most concerned about are being addressed? And so outside of the fact that he's not Donald Trump, what about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's policies do you think are going to address these concerns? And I will bring it to, and it doesn't necessarily have to be them, but I mean, or like, what do you think that what should their plan be? Like, if you were them, what would you say should be done? And so I will start with this time, Shay, because I haven't started with you yet. So, well, you know what? Let's switch it. Let's do Nikki. Let's start with Nikki for this one, and then we'll bring it up to Shay and then down to Vangie, all right? We'll do it like that. Nikki.
Well, I think one of the issues is that when you start talking about that, the fact that they maybe weren't our top choices is what we're probably going to end up getting is what we always end up getting, which is some version of incremental change. And, I think the reality is that the party is split. So as a lawyer, I absolutely support, there being changes and real significant changes to the criminal justice system. But I do think as a party, to Shay's point about like abolishing prisons, I just think that is not something that that's not a place where the party is going to go. They're to a certain extent, they take Black women voters for granted. And they know we kind of don't have a place to go. We're not going to vote for Donald Trump. So they know they have us. And so they're really going for the moderate white middle. And the moderate white middle, the belief is, at least within the party, the impression I have is that they are afraid. And that's what Donald Trump is playing off of, that if you don't over police Black and brown communities, then we're going to run lawless. We're going to burn down your cities. And not only that, we're going to move into the suburbs and maybe marry your white girls. I mean, it really is so much of this racist trope that's going on. But the truth is that many people within our own party believe that. And even some Black people believe that. When if you want to start having the conversation about respectability politics, and if we really want to talk about the history of the crime bill, the truth is that there were many Black leaders who were pushing that. It turned out in a way that people didn't anticipate. And I think one of the things that I always get frustrated with about racial conversations and about criminal justice in this country and the way the parties talk about it is I feel like sometimes the police can't tell the difference between who the Black person and who like a serious criminal is. And there are some people who are serious, dangerous criminals. And then there's other people that don't have opportunities and they're acting out in a way of frustration. And I think that there has to be a way to differentiate. But I think sometimes that we as Black people can't always differentiate. And I think those conversations that we are not having are conversations that the party isn't having. And so honestly, I don't have a lot of hope that there's going to be wide sweeping changes. I think it's going to be a lot of lip service. I think that's kind of what we see. I think we see people kind of being put forth as to say, look, we care about Black people and we care about Black people's issues, but are we seeing the systemic changes? Those, I think, are a little bit more difficult, and I would love to see them. And I think that you have to look at Black America, not just in the criminal justice system, but all of the things that lead to Black people getting into the criminal justice system. Lack of infrastructure within our communities, lack of educational opportunities, schools that are not working, or teachers that are underpaid, asbestos and lead paint within the systems, environmental racism, like chapter and verse. I'm a tax attorney, all of the economic things that have kept us in place, that even when we do try to succeed, there are, as Shay pointed out, laws that really kind of operate like they did in Jim Crow and really keep us from being able to advance in a significant way. So what I want to see is real policies that are for the advancement of African Americans and Black and brown people in the country, since we are going to be a majority, because the country is really only going to be as strong as its people of color. And I think a lot of people think differently, but that's the truth of it.
Okay, so then we'll move it to Vangie. Like, what do you think about what? I was going to
You're
Shay.
going to go to Shay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, Shay, go ahead.
And then we'll all tap in. I have to echo everything that Nikki said. It's so true. It's a lot of lip service, especially when I always say this to my friends, not all skin folk is kinfolk. And I found that a lot of my own people support opposite. But I'm in California, where our party and our governor is moving in a progressive way. And we are making changes in our criminal justice system. We're at the ending our, juvenile detention centers, and we're coming up with different policies. Yeah, we are doing some pretty progressive stuff here. I hope, when they say so goes California, so goes the nation, hopefully. But I think it's so many pieces of criminal justice that Kamala and Biden just can't touch on because they had a hand in it. And I think they tiptoe around it because that is their biggest critique, is those people who have been impacted by their decisions. And Nikki, my wife, is a police officer and in law school to be a lawyer, and I'm an elected official. And between the two of, like the three of us, because I have a couple personalities, we're able to to come up with a way to work locally when it's not happened nationally. And that's working within your cities and with your county. And the change that I can make here, while it may not be on a national, maybe one day, like you said, the incremental changes, it will be. So I'm hopeful that both of them will adapt some sort of criminal justice reform, because the lack of opportunities, and all the things you said, Nikki, that's the prison, the pipeline to prison that there's 12 in my family, 8 have been arrested, including myself. So it comes from where you're raised and what you've overcome. It depends on opportunities. So I think that I hope that that's something that they don't dance around on eggshells anymore, but really address. The best way to teach us and show us that they're not those people is by making progressive and changing how laws are impacting Black and brown people here in the United States.
Oh, wow. Okay. So then now we go to you, Vangie. I'm sorry. I know that they're talking about this, and you probably have kind of like an up close view of this because you're actually in Minnesota, and this is where this is where the spark happened, right? Out in Minneapolis, I believe.
In Minneapolis, where George Floyd was murdered.
Mm-hmm.
So, as they like to say, this is an inflection point where we need to actually change everything is moving forward. But when you look at the platform, the DNC platform, it was very broad, with not a lot of specifics, but they did highlight lots of people of color, Black, Indigenous folks, throughout the convention, which is great because they're paying attention. They know that we are voters and that they need our votes to win. Like Nikki says, that the Black female vote is a huge caucus, and we were not excited about Joe Biden. We weren't excited to vote for Joe Biden, but when he chose Kamala Harris for the vice president, now we can get really excited. Now we can get behind the party because they're hearing us, they're listening, that we want representation when it comes to addressing policies that affect us disproportionately and negatively. But we have to really talk about history before we go forward, right? All of the policies in the past, in the last 400 years, that have created disproportionate wealth gaps. You know, Minnesota is number 2 in disproportionate wealth gap, next to Wisconsin, where we just recently had the most incident yesterday with Blake, right? So the Midwest, as Shay said, if California goes, then the rest of the country. Actually, if Minnesota goes, then the rest of the country goes. Because, I mean, Minneapolis talked about abolishing or defunding the police, but we know as political folk is that it is not easy to just go in there and defund the police because you have a charter. You know, the charter says that you have to have a police force, you have to fund it in a certain way, and also you have to have the political will. Does this country have the political will to abolish the police or defund the police or reorganize it and reform it? And really, what does that mean when we're reforming the criminal justice system or public safety or the police departments? So as a progressive, and I would imagine that we're all progressive, we want to defund and abolish the police, but the DNC is targeting white moderates because they want to win, and that's, if that's the only way that we can win, then I guess that's the direction that we're going in. It's not the direction I want to be going in, but that seems to be the direction that we're going in.
Okay, so I mean, my thing is, and you know, me coming into this space, you know, when we're talking about police, I had never even considered abolishment of police because, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, there are instances where the police need to be present, right? But when we have the conversation of defunding and abolishment, I mean, I think that sometimes people get those two things mixed up, right? Defunding is saying that, for instance, we pay a lot of money in security in this country, right? We spend more than the top 10 countries on our military than the top 10 industrialized countries in the world combined. Our country spends a lot of money on security, whether it be locking people up, whether it be in policing, or whether it be policing other countries. We spend a lot. And so defunding is saying that we need to lower their budget and use that money to spend on other resources that can help the community. And I think Nikki was kind of hinting at that because, I mean, a lot of the times when people go left field, it's because of other issues that are contributing to that. I wanted to ask you all a question, and it's probably going to sound patronizing that I'm asking you, but there was a little bit of information that came back at me, and they were just like, Joe Biden was just like, I'm going to choose a woman. And, you know, and why did he say I'm going to choose a woman? Why didn't he just say I'm going to choose the best candidate possible? And then the best candidate so happened to be a woman. Did you think it was patronizing for him to say I'm going to choose a woman, and then choose a woman as if it was like he was doing people a favor, and trying to really cater to or patronize or cater to an identity in politics? And so I'm going to start this off. I'm gonna toss it back at you, Vangie. What do you think about that? And it could be a simple, short answer, or it could be a broader one. But do you think it was patronizing to women for him to say that he was going to pick a woman?
No, I don't think it was patronizing. I think he needed to say it because especially what that happened in 2016 with that it is time for women to be in leadership. But that's not what happened, obviously. And yeah, I mean, I thought for me politically, it was a good move for him to say that. But if he said that and didn't do it, that would have been very bad.
Right, right. How about you, Nikki? What do you think?
I think a win is a win. So I think that sometimes people get caught up in, oh, did that person get it because, of their gender or their race? For the vast majority of most of our lives, our race or our gender has cut against us. So I'm perfectly comfortable in the situations that we might get a second look when we might normally not. It's clear that she's qualified. She's excited us in a way that he hasn't excited us. And I'm okay with, as a woman, for people to say that, you know what, your gender maybe will impact how you look at this situation. Your race might bring something different to the table, and that they're excited about that. I mean, you've had how many men who had the job? So, I think that sometimes people use that as a way to kind of keep people out of the conversation or make you feel guilty or kind of undermine you and say that you're not qualified. The assumption is that the person of color or the woman, we're not qualified. And I mean, Donald Trump's president. Enough said about qualifications.
Right. How about you, Shay? What do you think about that?
I honestly, it's performative in my opinion. It was a dance, and he knew that Black women were going to be asking him to do more than he needed to do, or that he was going to do. And it was a very bold move. But I don't know if Nikki and Vangie or Alex, if you're receiving the emails. I mean, Black women came out saying, look, you're going to pick us. And it was a very loud shout. It wasn't even an ask or a request. I think that we've held up the country in our votes in taking care of children and other people's children. It was just about time. There it is. It was just about time for us to be in a position. And yes, it does matter that it's a Black woman, because Black women have different lived experiences. And regardless of how Kamala was raised, she has been around Black women continuously. So she is going to be able to be like, Joe, we ain't doing that today. She's going to be able to be there to give a different perspective and reasoning. And his whole thing about it being a woman, I was just glad that it was a woman, just period. And I was very happy that it was a Black woman. So I wasn't patronized by it, but like Vangie said, if he didn't do it, we would have had a problem. It'd have been like an Ice Cube movie. It would have been really bad. So I think what he did was very serious, and he stuck to what his guns were, is to get a Black woman in there. We all know Kamala. We all know.
But she's your U.S. senator, right?
Mine. Yeah.
So then let me ask you. Then let's move to here. We were saying that, and during the campaign trail, Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders had various parts of the African American vote, right? We saw overwhelmingly that Bernie Sanders had the young Black vote overwhelmingly, and that Joe Biden had the older Black vote, right? Well, even beyond that, even if we come out of race, Bernie Sanders had an overwhelming amount of young people following them, right? And the I've been hearing, because I've been keeping my ears to the street, that a lot of young people are kind of feeling disenfranchised by the Democratic Party. This is the second presidential race where young people were kind of like pushed aside and their concerns were not thought about. How do you feel as somebody who may have been around a little bit longer than most of the young people? How do you communicate to them that their concerns and needs are still going to be dealt with, and that the party does still care about the young people so that they can be brought into the fold? And I will start with you, Vangie. How do you feel we can communicate to the young voter that their concerns are still being heard by the Democratic Party?
I think you just have to go on TikTok and tell them. I'm actually very excited about how engaged the Gen Zers and the younger millennials are really getting active. I just hope, especially being in the streets when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement, being at the protests. But if you don't make it to the polls, then it's really hard for representatives to bring your issues to the table. And I feel that personally because I ran for city council president here in Rochester, Minnesota, where I live, and I had tons of young folks who supported my campaign because of my progressive ideas, but I did not get the votes that I needed to move past the primary. And I think when you really think about wanting to get representation at the table, you gotta get the votes. They gotta vote really when it comes down to it. And I've been seeing that we are trying to really get them engaged and get them excited. And they're doing it themselves too by educating themselves about the issues and how they can get more engaged too. So, it goes back and forth. We can't, it's not just about us reaching out to them, but, us meeting each other where we can meet each other and understand where we're both coming from.
Okay. How about you, Nikki? What do you think about that?
I mean, they have to vote. That's where the power is. And I know in Philadelphia, it's that Black grandma vote. It's the church lady vote. Like, they go out and vote. And I think also because the history is different in terms of a lot of older Black people kind of really remember when they couldn't vote, when they were born into a country where they couldn't vote. And so I think voting has a significance to them that's different from young people. It's not that young people aren't engaged, because they're engaged in advocacy. I just think that there's a disconnect with the idea that they understand that part of your advocacy has to be to vote, and that being able to kind of harness that power is going to be able to put a direction on what happens with the people that you vote into office. So while you're TikToking, go out and vote. While you're Instagramming, go out and vote. While you're Facebooking, go out and vote. But we also, I think, as a party, have to do a much better job of having them invested in the system. And so much of the system, I'm a Gen Xer, this, I think, for a lot of younger people, just has not worked for them and isn't reflective of it, and they don't buy into it in a way that maybe my generation did or older generations did. So they're like, why should I care about something that just doesn't work for me when my student loans are out of control, when I'm now going through the second economic crisis, and when so many of the things that we kind of purport to be the American dream are just not accessible to them. Healthcare, jobs with benefits and a pension, like those things are just not part of their reality. They're trying to survive. And I think they feel that so many of our politicians on both sides of the aisle are really not talking to their issues, and that when they bring it up, they're told that they're being crybabies, but where you're going to live is important. Having healthcare is important. And so, as Vangie said, it requires both sides to reach out to each other, but the party has to do a better job of really explaining to them why voting matters, other than just saying that they're against Donald Trump. What is this party for? How does it benefit whatever your constituency is, whether it's Black women, whether it's the LGBTQ, whether it's young people? What have you done for me lately? What are you going to do with my vote? And if not, people are going to sit home, especially during coronavirus, because they are trying to survive.
Yeah, I mean, and I hate to do this. I mean, well, no, I don't, because I think that there's a common misconception about young people and voting, and I think that that's kind of been the thing. As we know, our history is that African Americans, the vote has been suppressed for African Americans. And when you start doing a little bit of researching on why young people don't vote, you start to realize that the young vote is actually something that is actively suppressed in states. When students go to colleges and universities, The politicians actively try to suppress the vote of the young people and make it difficult for them to vote because they do not want them to influence the local elections. Like, for instance, in Philadelphia, Philadelphia is a majority college town. We have a number of colleges and universities in this area. If the students on campus would vote, they would probably influence heavily the elections here in the city. But as we all know, that's not exactly what happens. I don't know why there's a gnat just flying around me right now in front of this light. I guess it's attracted to the light. That's really weird. I'm sorry. Anyway, but the young vote is actually suppressed, so they do not influence elections. I mean, I think we see on both sides. I mean, there's a video that's now going around of Kamala Harris saying that children between 18 and 24 are just stupid, and that that's the reason why they have them in dormitories and they have resident advisors. And then you had Joe Biden in California saying that young people need to just get a clipboard and get out there and run for office themselves, as if it's an easy task. And as all three of us, me, Shay, and Vangie, I'm not sure if you've ran. I don't think you've run for public office, but you definitely ran a campaign for your Miss USA thing. And as you know, I mean, those things cost money. It costs a lot of connections and networks to be able to just do something. And so for somebody to just frivolously dismiss that is kind of concerning. So, you know, I think there's a huge common misconception that young people just don't vote. And they say sometimes that about Black people too. Black people just don't vote. I mean, when there are a lot of roadblocks to getting to that space of voting. So, like, I mean, I do love the fact that you kind of rounded that out too, Nikki, and it was like, and you know, I just realized I didn't give Shay a chance to answer the question, but I'm gonna do that in 2 seconds. There are impediments to the process that keep out liberal ideas. And I mean, I think it's me going on a rant because young people tend to be a little bit more idealistic than the more mature person. As we get older, we become a little bit more cynical and a little bit more aware of reality. So, like, I mean, like, how do we, and so I'm going to let Shay go to it, but then I'm just saying, how do we make sure that we use that idealism that young people have? Because it's the young people who are the revolutionaries that push the conversation sometimes. As more mature people, and I even know it myself, sometimes we could become cynical and we feel like things just can't happen. How do we still use the idealism and the fire and the fight that young people have to turn them and direct them towards the right path without squashing it and killing their dreams, especially when we have this last generation I'm a millennial, having gone through 2 recessions and now a pandemic and trying to survive through that, right? Where the generation before us, which is the Gen Xers, did not go through huge recessions like this. I think the last major recession that we had like this was in the end of the 1920s, when we had Roosevelt come in and FDR come in and do the New Deal, and Lyndon B. Johnson coming behind him and doing the Great Society. So how do we speak to these things, right? Because I think sometimes we put ourselves in position of other people, not recognizing the impediments to their processes. And so I'll let you go, Shay. I'm sorry.
That was a lot, but I'm here for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me trace it back. So I'm going to just start with young people. They are #the future. And yes, they are on ideals, but they get it long before our conditioning. We've been conditioned to do what we're told when it came to voting. Remember the old saying, oh, your vote is your vote, your vote is your voice, or if you don't vote for this, you're voting for that person. It was always a this or that. Instead of saying we need to have more engaging, more exciting people that don't follow the status quo, is what they're saying, to lead with more creative ideas of what's happening. Our communities have changed through the generations. It doesn't look anything the same that it did in my generation. And so young people have to be in the room, because who are we going to pass the baton over to? And that is the biggest problem I see, is we don't have a succession plan like the one they didn't have for me. That's why you see our legislators in their 70s, because there was no succession plan for the next generation. If the average medium in San Francisco, the age is 34 and your representative is 80, there's a huge disconnect in understanding what your issues, especially if you live with privilege. We have to consider that young people are not inspired by somebody that doesn't have any relation or understanding to what their experience is. because this generation is stuck still living at home and they hate their parents. I got 5. They want to be on their own. They want to make enough money to live in their community. I'm trying to get rid of 4. I want you to know, like, these are the things. And I work with young people. I'm infamous for trying to empower the next generation and creating seats that they should have and moving aside to let them have it. That is what we don't have in our current leadership. They're still stuck to these very old, to me, they're very, colonial type of behaviors. And I just don't agree with it. And the young people also have a voice that we're not considering. In 2016, I watched it. I watched how we tore young people apart because they were inspired by what Bernie was doing. Instead of saying, hey, maybe we should adapt what we're doing. And why don't we give a couple of youth seats for some high school students? That was not happening. They were kicking them out of the clubs, out of the den party. And it was shameful. And I'm like, wait, you can come with me. I'll let you have a voice. I'll give you that platform. So until we think that young people are not just young people, what we call them, and call them the voting population, and considering their issues in our platforms, we are still going to have this concern. Are they going to show up to vote? They show up by being inspired, not being told. Completely different generation. And I call them the one-touch generation. They will find out your dirt in seconds. They're masters at this. So they'll find your videos. They'll find all the things that you've done because they're like, oh, my mom may not be woke, but I'm hella woke. And you have to consider they're still part of our population and a voting population.
I hear that. Thank you. And so, go ahead. Jump in, Nikki. It's all you.
So this is a great conversation, but let's just get real. This is one of the problems. They don't want them to have power. Like what this is all about. There's not a succession plan because they don't want someone to succeed them. That's the truth. That's the truth. That's why there's not a succession plan. That's why there's incremental change, because people on both sides of the aisle benefit from the way things exist. They want your vote, but they don't want your voice. And it's not just young people, it's Black people, it's LGBTQ people. As long as you are about preserving their power, we're arguing about is which older, usually white person is going to be in office.
Say it, Nikki.
That's what we're really arguing about. It is not about advancing you or me or Alex or Vangie. It really isn't. We're going to have to take it. And I like to say I'm bougie with an attitude. And I always used to think that just being kind of respectable and having these conversations, which I believe in being a bridge builder, but the fact that I have to go to other people for my quality of life means that there is a power differential, that they have the power to give me something that I'm entitled to as much as they are. And so that is the underlying struggle within our party right now, with both parties actually, but who's going to have the power? Who's going to have these kind of conversations? And how do you force them to do so? So part of it is they are kind of scared now with social media because they can find out dirt, and because you can also give voice to really important issues in a way that they can't hide it. So they have to see that the cities are burning. And what do I have to do to get people kind of off of the streets? But once those fires are put out, what's happening after that? And I also think that it's important for people like me who are more privileged. And even though we're people of color, we are in rooms of power. We may be the only people of power, but what are we doing and what are we saying to pull other people behind us? Or are we staying silent to preserve our position? And, we have to put our feet to the fire because there's too much of this. We're okay if there's only one or two people, if we're the one or two, and it's not helping our larger community. But this is not happening. None of what's happening in this country is accidental. What's happening in the criminal justice system isn't accidental. It's the way it was set up to be. What happened with Bernie Sanders in 2016 was how things were set up to be. It was about people being gatekeepers so that they could keep the power, and that our role really is to preserve their power. That's it. And they will fight you tooth and nail to not have you have a voice. I mean, look at the fact that AOC, who's one of the most popular figures within the Democratic Party, she got a minute. They gave Republicans more time than they gave her. That's all you need to know. Ran over. But I mean, like, if we're going to talk about it, let's talk about it.
So then I guess it pulls. Oh, did you want to say something, Vangie, or look like you was ready to chime in? But I'll say this too, because I think this is the way I wanted to go. How do we hold the party accountable? What are you guys' biggest suggestions on how to hold people in power accountable? Now we know that power is something that does not concede. It does not just give itself away. How do we say, look, we are now giving you our vote. We understand that you are not Donald Trump. This is what our demands are. This is what y'all need to be doing. Senator Harris, Vice President Joe Biden, staffers, and everybody around. This is what we need to happen. If you don't do this, this is what we are going to do. How do we hold them accountable?
Well, we have to be disruptive. We have to always hold their feet to the fire. And if they say they're going to do something and they don't, we have to call them out on it. But, I'll address the idea of like holding power and passing it down. They don't want us to, they don't want us to have the power. They're willing to share the power with us as long as we, toe the line, right? Also, like the idea of progressive ideas, if you can have progressive ideas if a white person brings it forward, but if you have Black, Indigenous people of color bringing these progressive ideas forward, it's like, oh well, we're not ready for it. We're not there yet. And it's like we won't be ready until we do it. We just need to do it. We just need to have these progressive ideas. Even if I am a Gen Xer myself, I still believe that if we address a lot of the systemic racial issues, wealth disparity, health disparity, the prison industrial complex, all of that will solve so many of the problems that we have here in the United States. And just addressing the root causes of like poverty in general will like solve everything. But we're not willing to do that, even though, it wouldn't take very much. But I don't know why, for some reason, they don't see that as a winning platform.
Well, then let me ask you a question. I mean, do you feel like that there's something that should be done as far as like, what do you think would be done to like really move politicians? Because I don't think that, and I'll say this, I don't think that, so I know some politicians go into the space with good hearts and good intentions, right? But it feels like you said, like sometimes when you bring them in or you bring ideas to them, they kind of dig their feet in and they just say no, but sometimes they don't give the extended explanation of why the no is there. What do you think is causing them to say no? We understand that power, right? And sometimes it gives off the weird feeling of that they are probably bad people who are just power hungry. And we know that politics is a breeding ground for narcissists and people who like power. But what do you think are the impediments to the real change happening? Because these are some of the same conversations that Martin Luther King and Stokely Carmichael and Huey P. Newton and all of them were having, Malcolm X were all having back then, where they were saying the same thing: healthcare, prison industrial, not necessarily prison industrial complex, but the police and criminalization of races that are disliked, indigenous people not being treated correctly and them having high rates of suicide or domestic violence or drug use. And like, what do you think we could do to change so they will be more open to progressive ideas? What do you think is holding them back outside of the need for power? And I'll toss that at you, Shay.
Oh, good. I was going to just grab it.
Yeah.
Your power, girl. Grab it.
I was grabbing it.
Uh-huh.
I know that this is a national conversation, but honestly, like, if you just start changing the people who make decisions locally, meaning changing who the DA is, changing who I'm trying to push for California. We only have one city in California that has their chief of police that is elected for his seat. Only one in California. I'm trying to amend the state constitution that says all police chief have to run for office. So then they're accountable to the people, and change the requirements, right? It's things like this that you can do in your local cities and your local counties and in your states that can make the wave change. I think nationally, this is where we're going to be. I think Nikki said it's going to be incremental. I mean, it's going to be the tiniest baby steps. And they're going to be able to flash beautiful pictures of people of color to think they're listening and they understand when they don't, or these things that we're facing would be changed. These people that run have already been in positions of power and influence and opportunities to make change. So I think that if we don't change, it's like insanity. We have a different expectations, but we're not changing how we elect people. We're not changing the people that we elect. So if you have a city council of 10, why couldn't that have diversity, including young voices, and have some sort of, written in their bylaws on how votes happen with explanations to know, because a lot of people sitting in those spaces, even all the way up to the president, they are paid by a lot of these special interest groups that create the prisons, that create the food we eat. They shut down farms. Like, they're all a part of the same system. So if you don't change the person making decisions, the outcomes are going to be the same. So I think we as people have to require more and want more, and can't sit in the conditioning of the lesser of two evils, which is what we've been subjected to the last 20 years.
All right. Well,
I think that you, Alex, and Shay and I, we know all of that. And that is why we chose to run for certain offices, because if we aren't at the table making these decisions, the same people are going to continue to pass the same policies that continue to uphold the status quo, basically, right? But remember how difficult it is to win. Because if you don't have access, you don't have a pathway to succession or to winning, or you're not going to have those folks behind you that are going to back you with all the money. It is an uphill battle. I mean, like, it is really, local politics was very interesting to be part of, to see the process when it comes to who the city itself, the voters, wanted to see in the leadership position versus, like, advancing new ideas and new leadership. They don't want that. I mean, that's what it feels like here in my city. Minneapolis is a little bit different, but also they have ranked choice voting. So changing the way that we elect leaders also helps, getting rid of gerrymandering, getting rid of big money in elections. There will always be big money, but there has to be a way that all candidates can access money so they can be successful to win. Because if we don't let people like us get to a point where we can win big elections, we're just going to have the same people who have access to people in power to win. And that's really like where it's at,
Yeah. Okay. So, Nikki, did you want to touch on, or do you? Or you? I was going to pivot to one thing because we are at 8:59, and
pivot. These ladies covered it.
So we're at 8:59. You all have been absolutely amazing. I am a huge fan of every last one of you. Know that I am social media stalking every last one of you constantly, and watch you. Happy late birthday, Nikki. August kids rock. Mine's is tomorrow. So,
happy birthday.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm excited about that. So I always like to say, I would love you guys to leave something positive with the audience and how to allow them to social media stalk you guys and follow your careers. I know there are a lot of people who are donors who love great causes, who love to follow positive people that watch this live. And so just leave them with a positive word and tell them how they can connect with you on social media. And then we'll go ahead and I'll give my last word. And we will call it a night, all right? And we will start with Vangie.
All right. Well, stay engaged, stay active. Remember to vote November 3rd. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and TikTok, all at vote Vangie. You can also go to my website, vangiecastro.com.
And Nikki?
I think that it's easy to kind of get lost with everything that's going on in the country right now. But the fact that we are sitting here having this conversation and we're standing on the shoulders of so many people who came before us, who couldn't even imagine this life and who we are and what we've done is what really counts. And regardless of what direction this party goes in, we are going to hold their feet to the fire. And the country's better because people like us have a voice. And never forget that. Never forget that. Don't give up your power. You know, you are the future. And if you want to follow me, I'm at N Johnson-Huston.
Okay. All righty. And Shay?
So I just want to say first, thank you for having me. And I think that it's very important that people do show up and vote. If you want to make change, you have to be a part of the process. Join your local commissions, your central committees, get active, and don't ask them for you to join the room. Don't ask them to make a space. Make your own space. Your voice matters in how you do it. I am in California. So if you're in California, yes, on Prop 17, let's restore voting rights for those people who are coming home, reintegrating into communities. And you can follow me on Instagram at Sugar Shay, and it's SHUGGASHAY. That's my DJ name. I can't get rid of it. And that's where you can find out all the things that I'm working on.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all so much. You are absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you, Alex, for having us.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. And I can't wait till we all get to hang out again. Shay, Vangie, Nikki. I mean, come on. I mean, we've gone to so many great events together.
I know.
I miss you guys so much. I miss you guys so much. I wish DC was happening this year. I was like, I'm gonna see my family.
Right. All right. Well, have a great night. Thank you so much. And I will catch you guys next time. All right. So, wow, that was amazing. I love them. They make me feel warm inside. I love them. Yeah. Okay, so what I got to say something inspirational. I got to say something happy and leave you guys with a good message. Okay, so my message for today is, so I mean, we are in crazy times right now. I mean, we are slowly coming out of this pandemic, this shutdown, and we're slowly starting to figure out what normal is. Me personally, I have used this time to really try to build myself up. This has been a time of a lot of deep thought and really just doing a lot of internal work and just really trying to engage myself personally, try to be more healthy, try to do things that are a lot more positive. I've taken on this as a hobby, and I've just kind of done those types of things just to keep my sanity. I will say this, find your new normal. I mean, life has changed for all of us completely. And it's probably never going to be the same again. Please find your new normal. Find friends that really empower you and make you feel good. Like this right here, I'm able to connect with friends and I'm able to talk to them and they make me feel like there is some sort of normal. At some point, I probably would have traveled out to California. I would have probably ran into Vangie through the Victory Fund, or I would have been able to connect with Nikki at some bar association event, and we would have had a drink together, and that would have been normal. But this is now the new normal, right? And this is what's helping me stay sane. This is what's helping me hold on to that light. And so as we are doing this, find your new normal. Connect with friends that make you feel good. I mean, I always say this, after you get finished speaking to a person, do you leave their presence feeling inspired, or do you leave their presence feeling like you can't, insecure? And so that's really how you have to gauge your friendships and your connections, especially during this time. When you leave somebody's space, do you leave their space feeling inspired, or do you leave their space feeling insecure? And that should determine to you if that's somebody that you need to keep in your life. So I'll leave you with that. All right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you all so much for following me every Tuesday at 8 p.m. This is streaming live on YouTube at Talks with Alex. Yes, I changed the name. And you can follow me on Alex Deering on either my like page, my public profile page, or you can follow me on my personal page. You can follow me on Instagram. I am j.alex.deering. And on Twitter, I am Deering_Alex. And I think that's it on all my platforms. Yeah, so follow me, like, share, reach out to me, send me an email if you have any suggestions, DM me. Let me know how you feel about the talks. Give me constructive criticism. I'm here for it. I love to talk to people, especially since I'm home all the time. So please reach out, talk to me, and I will see you next week at 8 p.m. on Talks with Alex, and we'll have another dynamic panel, and we will talk about issues and things that are important to you all. All right. Thank you, and have an amazing night.